What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we wrapped up Conference Championship weekend. We talked about our newly announced college football playoff. Today, we released our final regular season XPR, our Extra Point rankings on our social media, where you can follow us at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And Dingle, now it's time for us to own up to the stuff we said in the offseason. I feel like it takes, say, a real man for us, right, to own up to the picks we made. Luckily, we're going to have a little fun because we got a lot right. We also got a lot wrong, but I'm excited to do this one. We'll make it a yearly tradition here on the Extra Point because we're not just going to say stuff and walk away, man. We're going to go back to what we said and see what we got right and wrong.
Yeah, there's accountability there. And we say a lot of stuff in the off season, so we're actually going to be pulling from a few different times. Obviously, our preseason picks is going to be a main one because we put records next to names. We made actual picks of games. We also did some stock up, stock down, and just general feelers. Jacob, you have your own little list of your best bets. I mean, this is going to be fun to kind of get into because we really, we have our own full-time jobs. This is something we do on the side. Obviously, we'd like to do more of this kind of content, but I mean, we've been watching college football for years. We don't get paid to do this, but
we don't, unfortunately. We're
definitely hitting on the same line as several experts in many cases. And look, we were humbled too. College football will humble everybody. All right. And so we definitely want to get into it and see, what makes sense, what didn't make sense, what makes sense now and seems so obvious and we should have known it, and, call ourselves a dummy from something in August that we said that we thought was the most true statement ever. And then now it just seems foolish. So this is something fun to do. It also kind of reframes your perspective. So many people might see something in college football, and because they've known about it all season, perhaps they think, oh, this has always been what we thought. No, that's not always been the case. You get data, you learn, you grow.
That's right.
With the new information. So this is exciting. I love this. It's like going into a vault.
I actually pulled up. I didn't tell you we were going to do this, so we don't have to. I was going back. I was like, what other picks do we make? Because we're going to talk about our stock up, stock down that we did in the spring. Something else we did in the spring, one of our original segments here on the Extra Point. Who's back? I'm looking at our who's back rankings, and we're going to have to talk about it.
Please bring it up.
You know what? Let's start here. This is the first thing we do. This is. We did this.
Where's our hat on this, man? We love this.
35 weeks ago, April 5th. All right. So this is an original segment here on the Extra Point. Who's back? So we have 8 programs that are historical, quote unquote, blue bloods. And the caveat is they have not played for a national championship since 2010. Is that what we said?
I believe so.
And all of these, it's at least been since 2005. So I think that's what it is. You haven't played for one since 2010. So it's been a while since they've been like nationally relevant. So we've gotten to do this every offseason. So the programs are, well, I'll just read you in Daniel's order. This was our who's back rankings. All right. Notre Dame, Michigan at 2, Penn State, Miami, USC, Tennessee, Texas, Nebraska. Now you got to think this is not like who we favor this season. This was like state of the program
at that
who's most back. Yep.
There's gonna be some movement this year. I tell you what.
There's gonna be the number 1 this year. So
for sure.
Mine, I gave Notre Dame, Michigan, Miami, yikes, Penn State, Texas, USC, Tennessee, Nebraska. Now we both nailed Nebraska being at the bottom. They fired Scott Frost.
Solid.
Solid.
We're all over that.
I had Tennessee at 7.
I had them at like 6, right?
Yeah, they're doing okay. They're doing okay in Knoxville.
They're definitely going to be top half of that one. All right.
We both had Miami I had them at 3, had them at 4. Uh,
Yeah,
they could turn things around in a hurry, but man, they're not getting 3 on my ballot this
dude.
year.
The fact that we'll get into that, I guess, because that's one of my major ones for the
Yep,
ACC.
me too. We'll get there.
Yeah, but that's the fact that like they fired Manny Diaz, and then this was like I could get like a sidestep or maybe one step back, but it's almost like they took 2 or 3 steps back this year.
Man, let's start here. So we did on, let's see, on May 17th, we did an episode. We've done this a few off seasons now too, of buying and selling team stocks. Last year we did it with David Cobb of CBS Sports. This year we did the same thing, brought David back. So Daniel, I'll let you start first. You bought stock in LSU and Ole Miss,
That's
and you
right.
sold stock in Ohio State and USC. How are you feeling about those 4 teams?
Okay, relative to where they are, I sold stock in Ohio State correctly, saying that they would lose a game in the regular season. They did.
They did.
So they went 11-1. I feel good about
Get
it.
context. You did say all that. You said, I'm
I
selling
framed it
stock
that
in.
way.
I don't think they're going to go undefeated. That's what you said.
I also said I don't think they're going to national championship. I can still be wrong about this
You
if
could
they
be.
go through. It is unlikely because most likely they would have to go through what we conclude is probably the best team, and the college football playoff has also concluded that Georgia is number one. So going through SEC champion and then presumptively having to right their wrong against Michigan if they were to play them again. So it is unlikely, but they have a chance. I feel good about it because the way I said it, that is what I expected of them. But I actually expected them to win the conference with losing a regular season game. So, I mean, they lost to Michigan and they didn't win the conference. So, and then USC, I said the hype will suffocate the season. So I sold USC. Um, and while ultimately they did not make the college football playoff, let's just like rewind to what our expectations were of them in the preseason. They far exceeded the expectations. I know the most recent thing is to talk about how they kind of blew their chance and they were one dimensional without Caleb Williams, and or without Caleb Williams' legs specifically, but they weren't. They were very reliant on him, but I think we overlooked how good of a player he is and how good of a coach Lincoln Riley is.
Yeah,
At least I did. You were on them, and maybe you weren't high enough on them because they actually
I
exceeded
wasn't.
your expectations. Of course, on my buy LSU. The funny thing here is in my notes
You're
I
right.
have Miles Brennan for life. Okay, so
that
while I
was your
hit
stock, man. Sending to LSU is all dependent on Miles Brennan.
is Miles Brennan. Now, granted, it was Miles Brennan with Brian Kelly. So I think it all roots in the fact that I believe in Brian Kelly. It came back to that. But I believe that Brian Kelly having Miles Brennan, I think that the marriage was just going to work because Miles Brennan had dealt with injuries and like maybe he was going to be healthy now. And I was really, really high on the receiving core, which is still a great receiving core. They ended up having a good season once they got going with Jaden Daniels. I didn't really believe in Jaden Daniels' passing ability at that time. And to start the season, to be fair, he was not very good on that in that aspect of the game. He improved vastly over the year. So I was right about LSU. They weren't 10-2. I was really hoping to be right about that. But 9-3, I still feel like I bought stock at the right time where most people were picking LSU to be fifth, sixth, or seventh in the SEC West. So for them to be the Western champion, I feel like it validated much of what I was saying back then. And then Ole Miss, I think that was more of a push one way or the other.
Yeah,
I, so they kind of they were where they were. It's tough to be where they were last year. I was really big on the transfers, and then the best player ends up being a freshman that nobody knew about in Quinshon Judkins. So
they went. They go 8-4. Yeah, they went 8-4.
yes,
Yeah, so teams I bought stock in North Carolina and Texas. North Carolina hit. North Carolina was one of my 8 best bets of the season. Their win total was at 7.5. Bet the over. They go 9-3, and they really should have been better than that. But 9-3 it was. I had them going 10-2. They go 9-3. So Texas. Oh, Texas. What could have been? Bud Elliott said this, and I completely agree. You have to account in college football for, like, you're not going to get the best version of each team every week. Like, you're not going to get every team's A plus. I will still say that I think Texas's A plus is the best team in the Big 12. But the problem is, they probably played at an average of C plus all year. When they turned it on, there's a reason the power ratings love Texas. But I will say I was wrong on Texas. I had them going 10-2. They finished 8-4. Third in the Big 12, did not make the Big 12 championship. I picked them to win the Big 12. So wrong on Texas. So 1-1 there. And then the stocks to sell, I was 1-1 as well. So Oklahoma State. I was worried mid-season, Daniel, and I was getting ticked off. I'm like, there's not as good as they seem. They keep skidding by, and luckily it caught up to them. They literally ran out of gas, and they ended up going 7-5. Their win total was set preseason at 9, and I'm like, they're not winning 9 games. Like, they're for sure not winning 10. And middle of the season, I was like, you know what? At worst, I'm going to get a push at 9-3, and the bottom fell out. Man, they just lost a lot of games. Finished 7-5. So I felt really good that I was on the right side of Oklahoma State, and then South Carolina was one of my other ones. And I'll say that this partially came to fruition. So I said, like, hey, every team in the SEC East is hopeful in year 2. And here's the thing, Daniel. Vanderbilt got better in year 2. They finished 5-7. Tennessee got way better in year 2. And I'm sitting here going, like, South Carolina's just going to have to lose some of these games. They went 6-6. Or excuse me, I had them going 6-6. They go into the last 2 weeks of the season with games against Tennessee and Clemson at 6-4. And I'm sitting here going, like, all right, yeah, this is how you finish. You finish 6-6, just like I said. Good year, but 6-6, and they go and upset Tennessee and Clemson, which is not how I would have had them finishing the season. But ends up that they end up being, being 8-4, and me being wrong about South Carolina.
This meeting is being recorded.
Let's go back to, let's just go conference by conference, Daniel. So let's start with, we're just going to go in order of how we did these conference previews. So independent group of 5, we did all together. Give me, one, a few, whatever. What are some teams you're right and wrong about? Let's alternate. So you give me a team, then I'll give you a team.
I'll start at the top of the independents and say I was wrong about Notre Dame. And that's I don't think I was wrong about the team. I was wrong about the record, because the team ended up being what I expected them to be by the end of the season. But their record didn't reflect that. And you could say you are what your record is, but we know there's ebbs and flows with college football teams. And with them losing, I figured they would lose to Ohio State, but obviously losing to Marshall the following week, I mean, that shocked everybody. Nobody had that. And then you could almost explain it away as a hangover effect to the Ohio State game until they lost to Stanford. But then they turned a corner in the season and finished on beating Clemson was a huge marquee part of the season. That was one of the ones we were probably circling as a loss for them, and the fact that they won it. They obviously end up in the final CFP rankings in the top 25, working their way up as one of the best 3-loss teams, and then eventually finish with 4 losses with losing to USC to end the year. But, they lose their starting quarterback. So that you got to take all those kinds of things into account. I think the team, though, I think the biggest thing is Marcus Freeman can do this job. It just, it took him a second to get rolling. So
he's kept that recruiting class together, which is impressive after the year they started to have there at the beginning. So Notre Dame was also on my wrong list. I will go into the wrong. I will say SMU. I picked SMU to go 10-2. I just thought that offense, Rhett Last was going to come in, was set up for success. Looks like Sonny Dykes did a heck of a coaching job given what TCU did this year.
Right.
Turns out he might have had some secret sauce because SMU goes 7-5. They finished outside the top 50 in SP Plus. So just a bad read for me on SMU. That's depressing. Let's get to something good. Give me something you're right on, Daniel.
I mean, ugh, it's tough to be right in this group, but maybe Cincinnati.
Yeah,
I mean, I picked 9-3, so
same.
feel good about that. They took a step back, but they're still, you know, very good. I think we had them winning the American, even though they did not expect, Tulane to pop up like they did and everything like that. But still feel good about that. 9-3. They're a good team, good coach.
Sweet UCF winning the American. We were close. They were in the game. Since he was my other one right too, 9-3, nailed it again. Like you can't be a team like Cincinnati and lose 9 draft picks and then just be fine again.
Right.
That's not Cincinnati. That's not the kind of program they are at their level. They were going to take a step back. Still a very, very good team. I'm looking at SP Plus. I'm vamping. Where does Cincy rank? Yeah, 27. It's like you're still like a top 30 team. You go 9-3, lose your streak in the AAC, but still a very good football program. Thought we had a really good finger on the pulse of that one. Let's go to the ACC, Daniel. I'd like to take 3 victory laps, if I may.
Please do.
2 really strong ones, and then one I was on it, and I still underestimated them. Louisville, North Carolina are my 2 victory laps. These were both, I talked about UNC already. So Louisville was also on my best bets. This one started hot, and then I had to sweat it out. But over 6 on Louisville's win total was one of my best bets. They finished 7-5. Cunningham ended up getting hurt. So I get it by a game. Felt like this was still the right side, though, for sure. And then Florida State. Man, Florida State, I had going 8-4. Florida State last year was a team that when we were doing records together, I'm sitting here telling you last year, like, dude, they can go 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 even. And you're like talking me off the ledge. I think we ended up settling on 8-4 last year.
We did.
And this year I'm like, nope, it's year 3 now of Norvell. He can do it now. Like, this is it. And man, I missed it by a game. They went 9-3. So still feel like I'm on the right side there. And I bought Florida State and that, Jordan Travis in this year could do something special. He's even coming back next year. So I'm really excited to watch that team with him at the quarterback still and watching what Norvell is doing. Happy I was buying some stock in Florida State.
Yeah, that's kind of where I would start for me being wrong was Florida State. I had them 6-6. I'm happy to be wrong because I didn't expect them to make that big of a leap just yet. I felt like there was still some ground to cover there, and they very much impressed. And in some of those games, Jacob, it wasn't just winning. I mean, it was dominating, and
Especially in
that's
the
really
season.
that's really the most impressive part. This team got better as the year went on. Impressive win over LSU in their backyard to start the season, where they controlled most of that game. LSU had to make a late comeback to even have a shot, and then you go through. I mean, beating Miami 45-3, dominating. Just getting through this schedule is something that Florida State has not been able to do, and you shouldn't take lightly over the past several years. So this is definitely a good sign of things to come with Florida State. I was encouraged. Clemson, I feel like I got right in the conference. They weren't, perfect or anything like that. They lost the game in conference, but then, I mean, losing to South Carolina, we didn't expect that, obviously. So, on the one hand, I feel like I got it right. On the other hand, bleeding over from the SEC, we got South Carolina wrong. Shout out Cartwright, but we, that Clemson, if they just win that game, I mean, there's a chance they're in the playoff because they're a conference champion.
They're in. I
You know,
think.
you would think that would be the case. I would expect it. So NC State and UNC, I had them flip-flopped basically based on that one game. So if you want to draw the season down to a game, I had NC State at 9-3. I had UNC at 8-4, and they were inverted, and it was because NC State won that last game of the year. So I felt like I had a good beat on them, but I didn't have that matchup right. So there's that. And then we got to talk about Syracuse and Georgia Tech, man. Both of them we expected to not have, to not go over their win total. I was very low on, I was lower on Syracuse than anybody, and they impressed me this year. They had a good season by that, that what we expected from what we expected. And, Georgia Tech, I felt like we read it right. It just,
We did.
it went
I will
completely wrong.
defend that pick. I'm here to defend my pick. They fired their head coach in September. Like, you know what I mean? Like
With only one win against Western Carolina at that moment.
Yeah, this had, what do we say, 2-10?
Yeah, and that
I'm looking.
that was because
we both said 2-10. I'm like, this was their win total.
That third win.
No, their win total was at 3.5. I had them going 1-7 in conference, beating Duke, which we can talk about. 2-10. But again, this had all the writings of this being the right side, especially being under 3.5. Because I'm like, they're not getting to 4 for sure.
We didn't even think they could get 3 wins.
Right.
So 3.5 felt like a slam dunk. Like they're not getting there.
This was the only one of my 8 best bets that I got wrong, but I'm fine with it because I'm like, they fired their head coach. I did not think that the team hated Collins that much, and they played so well for the interim guy that he got hired as the full-time head coach. So I mean, there was something in the water there. I'll stand by that one. Dude, Duke and Syracuse, we just whiffed on. Shout out to Duke. Went 8-4, Daniel.
Yeah.
They were a game from winning the Coastal, from winning the ACC Coastal. So I'd like to publicly apologize to Duke and to Syracuse. We got to talk about one more team in the ACC, Daniel. I'd like to apologize publicly for believing in you, Miami. What a shame.
Man, we both had them number 1. We both had them 10-2, 7-1 in conference. Jacob, what were we thinking? We thought that they would lose to Texas A&M out of conference, and that would be their bad loss. But like A&M stunk too. Like,
so it was a bad loss, but
it was an awful loss. But them going 5-7 after, what did they go last year? 7-5 under Manny Diaz.
Yeah, they made a bowl.
Yeah.
Gross. It was a gross taste in my mouth.
I mean, we talked about their staff being a great staff, and it still might end up being, this one year. We talked about their depth at quarterback. They played 3 quarterbacks this year.
they did go through their depth.
They certainly played all 3. And then it's just bad luck, man. Like, they're losing games left and right. They're losing to teams we didn't think they should. They're taking it on the chin by, when they lost to Florida State 45-3, that's the biggest ineptitude. If you lose 45-20, that's a bad loss. 45-3, it was utter domination on both sides, all 3 phases.
Right.
So definitely something
shame.
with Miami there where they were just not. Yeah.
Let's go to the Big 12. Yeah, that was next. So Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, TCU is one of my best bets. I didn't have them going 12-0. I did have them going 8-4. Their preseason win total was set at 6.5. I thought that was a slam dunk going over, but so I'll say right, but still wrong. Like, I was buying TCU, didn't buy them to the level that I apparently needed to.
Right.
With them going 12-0. And then, another best bet. I talked about it with the stock, but Oklahoma State, I won't harp on it again. What did you get right in the Big 12?
Yeah, so while I didn't get Texas winning the Big 12 like I had predicted, they did go 8-4 like I expected. So I felt really good about that. I think that's, I felt like I had a good read on them. And the reason I had them winning the Big 12 is because, like we were talking about before, I mean, they're power rated when they play their A+ game. I think they could beat everybody in the conference. But I mean, goodness, where we were wrong, or specifically me, but we both picked them. Oklahoma. I mean,
Yep,
but
that's one of mine.
everybody's wrong. We were just, you learn from history, and history says Oklahoma's going to win 10 games and be in the Big 12 championship, and they weren't. So we expected last year to be their down year where they missed it by this much, and we expected them to come roaring back. And that was certainly not the case.
No, I'll tell you one more we were both wrong about. Kansas. Kansas.
We
Shout
had both
out. We
2 and
both had
10.
you going 2-10. You go 6-6. The thing is, man, the way this thing started. Sorry, I'm going back. They started. What is it? 1-2. Lost to Baylor. Oh, this is 21. I was like, that's a lot of losses.
I was about to say, I thought they started 6-0
Yeah.
or not 6-0, 5-0.
Yeah, 5-0 before TCU. And they finished 6-6. They finished 1-6 the season.
Well, their season was backloaded, but they certainly
and their starting quarterback got hurt.
Outperformed what we expected. So definitely a great coaching job, and just all around. I mean, I'm impressed. This was, Lance Leipold did what he needed to do. It kind of goes back to what with Duke, Elko, Mike Elko. You just don't know. You don't know with these, head coaches that taking over a bad program, that's been left in disarray. They're not supposed to have this good of a season this quickly.
Right.
So excited for them, man. Those fan bases deserve going to bowl games and watching their teams play. I mean, that's one of the best rewards is getting a bowl game, getting an extra game to play.
Oh yeah, 100%. Big Ten, Daniel. I will start with Minnesota. Another one of my best bets. I went over 7.5 wins. They just get over that. They went 8-4. Felt like, I picked them to go 9-3. Thought there was a chance they win the Big Ten West, but I picked them to finish second. But Minnesota, man, I liked it. And then Penn State. I picked Penn State to go 10-2. Picked them to go to New Year's Six Bowl. That ended up happening. So I feel really good about Penn State and Minnesota. Where did you feel good about the Big Ten?
Well, it felt good that I feel like I zeroed in on Ohio State correctly. As far as that 11-1, I'm not going to, that was really good. But where I fell short was, who they lost to. I had Michigan 9-3. So all the tea leaves were, pointing to Michigan's taking a step back because of the nature of their offseason with what Jim Harbaugh was going through. So that's just yet another reason why we're looking at, he lost his coordinators. He, interviewed for that head coaching job with the Vikings on National Signing Day. And then he turns around and has a phenomenal year, a better year than he had last year. So, I was wrong about Michigan, right about Ohio State, and I was wrong about Wisconsin. I had Wisconsin at 10-2. I thought that was a pretty safe bet. I thought they would be good, but not great, but they would get, New Year's Six Bowl. They'd be in the Big Ten
beat up on those
championship
West
game,
teams,
do what they need to do. And I think going forward that they're going to be right back there with Matt Rule. That hire is phenomenal. Fickle, excuse me. Matt Rule at Nebraska. Yeah. They're both red.
2 red
They're
Big Ten West schools. Yeah.
It's tough. With Fickle. No, you can tell how high I am. I forget their coach's name. No, with Luke Fickle. Really both of them were so upgraded, though. It really was like I just lumped them in together.
Oh, yeah. And they happened within like hours of each other. Yeah.
Luke Fickle, I think he could get them right back to 10 wins this year. So
no doubt.
Anyways, I was wrong about Wisconsin, but the Big Ten West was basically the ACC this year. Nobody knew what was going on. They were basically the coastal division this year of the ACC.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. Speaking of the Big Ten West, Illinois whiffed on. I had them going 4-8. They went 8-4. Tom Fornelli. Sorry, man. I shouldn't have doubted your alma mater.
Should have known.
Shout out to Illinois. They go 8-4, 5-4 in the Big Ten. I had them going 2-7 in the Big Ten. Tommy DeVito comes in. Dude, Brett Bielema was just a really good Big Ten coach. I think that's what it is, man. He
knows
shouldn't
it.
have ever left. I think Wisconsin he could have done great things at, but he just goes into Illinois. He just wins Big Ten games. I'll also say I was wrong, or right on Northwestern, wrong on Michigan State, Wisconsin. I had to. So, you win some, you lose some, and sometimes you drop your phone. So,
Gosh, that scared me.
sorry. Let's go to the Pac-12. Daniel, this was, believe it or not, my best performance of the season was preseason Pac-12 win picks. I had 10 of 12 teams within one game, and then one of the schools I had within two, and the other one was the school I was most wrong on, which I'll go ahead and say, which was Washington. I had Washington going 7-5. They go 10-2. I missed that team by 3 games. But other than that, I was within a game on every school in the Pac-12. I'll just highlight my Beavers, Oregon State. I said you'd improve again and go 8-4. They went 9-3, so they outdid me by one more. So shout out to the Oregon State Beavers. Arizona, one of my best bets of the preseason. Their win total was set at 2.5, and Oregon State was 2. So, but my last 2 best bets were Arizona over 2.5, Oregon State over 6. Oregon State goes 9-3. Arizona, and did they go 5-7? Is that what they ended at?
Arizona, I think so.
Yes. Yeah, 5-7. So again, they beat that by several games. So shout out to those 2 schools. And I'll also say USC. I had them going 10-2 in the regular season. They went 11-1. So I was buying that Lincoln Riley and his transfer portal all-stars were going to make an immediate impact on year one. I still undersold them a little bit. I didn't think they would, I had them at 10-2, which is contending for a Pac-12 championship. Utah winning the Pac-12, so feel good about that one. But overall, man, I'm just, as a guy who grew up in the Southeast, happy to be nailing the Pac-12. Pac-12 Jacob is what they're calling me, man.
Dude, move over David Cobb because Jacob is coming for the
That's
Pac-12.
right. Pac-12 expert.
Yeah, man. No, yeah, I feel good about the top of this. Like Utah, I had them finishing ahead of USC. I know that it's all one big jumble. But in the South, even though it was, you had 2 South teams essentially play for the championship, I had Utah going 10-2. They ultimately went 9-3, and then you flipped that with USC. USC went 9-3 it went 10-2 in the regular season. Or no, excuse me, they went 11-1. I had them at 9-3, so I was wrong about USC. I would count that I was right about Utah because I had them ultimately winning the Pac-12. So feel good about that. I guess we both did because I think we did joint picks for that. I feel like I had a beat on Oregon, but they kind of fizzled there late and ended up at 9-3. I had them at 10-2. So, definitely an issue there, but yeah, Pac-12, I mean, while it may be very clear to you, Jacob, it's still somewhat of a mystery to me, especially now that next year we'll probably be picking them as a group rather than individually, as a division. So,
You'll learn, baby. You'll learn.
Interesting.
Nice little office reference there for the ones who get it. SEC, Daniel, you and I grew up in the Southeast. We've grown up in the capital of the SEC, Atlanta. So I feel like this is the one that we should get the most right. And I feel like this was the conference I got the most wrong. I know you and I have some of the same teams I want to talk about. I've already mentioned South Carolina. Arkansas, I'll say quickly. Wrong on Arkansas. Had them going 9-3. KJ Jefferson getting hurt didn't help there. Texas A&M returning a fumble from the goal line for a touchdown also didn't help me there. 2 teams I think we were both high on. We got to talk about A&M and Alabama. You and I both had Alabama going 12-0. I just thought hey, Nick Saban privately told friends this is going to be his best team. He's got the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, the best quarterback he's ever had returning. He got Jahmyr Gibbs. He's supposed to have a good offensive line.
Will Anderson.
Will Anderson. I haven't even gotten to Will Anderson yet. Best pass rush in the country was supposed to be. Man, I
He still had
whiffed
10
on
sacks
Alabama.
this year.
Yeah, but I whiffed 10-2. I didn't see coming. I thought this would be Saban's best team. You had him winning the Natty.
Had him winning the Natty. I had them losing the SEC championship to Georgia and then doing what Georgia did to them the year before. I did not see Alabama. Losing 2 regular season games. No, there was no way we would predict that. That has not happened in the Saban era except for his very first season. So, definitely surprising. A&M is somewhat even more disappointing because I felt like you and I, while we put maybe pressure on them by picking them and saying, yeah, they're going to win 10 games or whatever our expectation was, they also, Jacob, we were ahead on them. We were saying, yeah, we're picking them, but they're going to be better next year. They're going to be, we're even, disqualifying this year. Hey, don't overthink it this year. They're still a year away. They're
it was
a year
the 13
away.
Florida State principle.
Exactly. So but then it turns out, no. They're a few years away, and they really better figure out offensive coordinator because Jimbo can't be calling plays. One of our biggest fears for them came to fruition. So there's that. But yeah, Alabama, I don't think it's over. Like we get at this point in the season, we can look and say, oh yeah, Alabama lost 2 games. And it was surprising when they lost 1 game to Tennessee. That was surprising. The 1 game to Tennessee because they haven't lost to Tennessee in 15 years.
Saban hadn't lost to Tennessee yet.
And then they've dominated LSU in Baton Rouge over the past 20 years. So it's another one of those things where we weren't expecting that game. And we figured once Alabama had a loss and then they looked dominant against Mississippi State, who's a pretty good team this season, we're like, they're gonna get this thing turned around. Saban's gonna, he's got Bryce Young. There's no way they're gonna, have a bad end to the season. And losing to LSU, while I felt validated in my LSU pick, if you go back and listen to those episodes, Jacob, I was saying that one of LSU's 2 losses would have been to Alabama. So definitely didn't predict that game. Alabama, that's Jacob. It's culture at Alabama, and that has never been the issue since Saban has been there. He got the culture right after the first year, and then, that's been what drove that Alabama machine for so many years. And it just seems like, the culture is catching up with them. Penalties. I think that there's, issues with targets on the team. Who's getting targeted? Just the whole cultivation. Early in the season, they had to go to the backup Jalen Milroe at quarterback because of Bryce Young's injury. At that point, if they had lost the game, I would have been surprised, but I also could have explained it away. These were full strength Alabama teams that lost. So, this is definitely disappointing that, my national champion won't be right. I picked them to do it. I thought it was somewhat of a slam dunk for them to be in the playoff. If I was a betting man, I would bet money that they would have been there because of, like you said, that what they're bringing back. They got the greatest coach of all time, his best quarterback he's ever had coming back, a future top 5 pick in Will Anderson, who still got double-digit sacks this year in a quieter year, if you want to call it that. It's very, very disappointing. But, as far as any other teams in there, we got Georgia right. We had them. I think we both had them 12-0.
Yep.
And then Kentucky, I had them 9-3. You had them 8-4. Just a little high on Kentucky this year. I think they had an identity crisis because they're, Mark Stoops likes to, even if they're going to throw the ball around, he likes to have that offensive line intact, and they weren't really able to do what he wanted to do this year. So, and then shout out to friend of the show, Barton Simmons. I mean, Vanderbilt,
BU.
they 2 SEC wins at the end of the year, won 2 of their last 3 games. Definitely a good way to, in the season, getting 2 of those wins, get the monkey off their back, maybe head into next year with some momentum. So good for Vanderbilt. Definitely nice to get a couple wins.
Oh yeah, shout out to Vandy. I wanted to say about Bama too, real quick. There's a lot of talk from people like, "Oh, look at Bama's 2 losses there by a total of 4 points." Well, our good friend Kelly Ford, friend of the podcast at K Ford Ratings on Twitter, does a what if rankings. So it's what if every 1 possession game the results were flipped, and so everyone's like, "Hey, Bama lost 2 1 possession games. Well, they also won 3 1 possession games. So if all those results were flipped, it'd actually be 9-3 instead of 10-2. So like they had 5 1 possession games. Bama didn't used to do that, Daniel. That they were beating everybody by three touchdowns plus. So for the record, too, Texas will be 10-2. Man, that stinks. You want to know what TCU would be?
Oh, what would they be? They'd have several losses.
Yeah,
It's like 4-8.
7-5. But I mean,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I mean, still, 7-5, 1 possession games flipped. Man, that's hilarious. Illinois would be 11-1.
Wow.
Wow,
Wow.
that's hilarious. Man, all right. I want to end with you and I both predicted the same college football playoff, same teams, different order. I think though, maybe not.
I think
it was the same
so.
order, but we both got 2 out of 4 right. So we both said that Ohio State and Georgia would be in the fifth playoff. Then we both also had Alabama and Clemson. Obviously, those 2 teams are not in it. You had Alabama as your champion. I had Ohio State. Still possible. We haven't done our playoff preview yet, but they got to go through Georgia. We'll see who we pick in that game. Heisman, I said C.J. Stroud. He's a finalist. He's probably not going to win. I don't think he deserves to win. But he's a finalist. Who was your Heisman? Was it also Stroud?
I had C.J. Stroud. Yeah.
Yeah.
I took the easy way out. We both had him.
Coach of the year. I can't remember who he picked as coach of the year. Was it Day? You wouldn't have picked Day. I don't know who he said. I'm going to have to go back and listen.
I've been going off of our phenomenal graphics on at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram. So if you want to see our accountability, it's all still right there. You can go back and
delete
look
it
yourself. Yeah, we're not going anywhere with it. That's what's been so great to reference our win-loss. But that being said, we did not list who we had winning those awards. We just previewed the show. Yeah, I don't know. I may have had Kirby Smart thinking back, but I know that he was definitely on my list. I think Brian Kelly is what I said. I think I said Brian Kelly actually because of my 10-2 LSU. He better be.
They released the finalists today. I can't remember if he was a finalist or not. I need to go back and look. I think I like the tweet. I can't find it. I can't remember I know the finalists were Troy's head coach. I'm forgetting his name right now. Kirby, Jim Harbaugh. Those 2 are very deserving. Sonny Dykes. I think he's going to win. Because again, typically coach of the year goes to like poor year the year before, poor expectations, way overachieved. And they made the playoff. It's like, I don't think he's undeserving. Please don't hear me say that. I think he is a deserving coach of the year winner.
They have several deserving coaches this year, though. That's how it was. You could give the award to several coaches.
Yeah, 100% agree. Several worthy coaches. But definitely think Brian Kelly deserves to be considered. Josh Heupel deserves to be considered. But Kirby and Harbaugh deserve to be right up there as well. To lose what they did and to do what they've done and the dominance they've done it. Like, I think sometimes it's like Saban. Saban, every other year, He should win Coach of the Year probably.
Right.
It's just like, oh, it's just the standard. That's just Alabama, and he almost gets discredited for what he's built there.
Right.
I just don't want it to be, and they're finalists, which they deserve. But Harbaugh and Kirby, what they've done this year is
In the two toughest conferences.
to
They're
dominate
in
the
the
way they
two
did.
toughest conferences, and they have, Michigan has to go through Ohio State.
Yep.
And Georgia presumably would have to go through Alabama. This year they didn't, but somebody had to go through Alabama for Georgia to face them. So it still doesn't discredit, who they've played and what they've done.
Fun fact. This will come up in playoff conversation. If you've made it this far to the episode, here's a fun fact for you. Since 2007, every team except for now 2 that won the national championship was either Alabama or had to beat Alabama on their way to winning the national championship. So 2013, Florida State was the first team since Saban got to Alabama that didn't have to play Alabama on their way to winning it. And then 2022 will be the second time. They're the team that wins the Natty because none of the 4 teams played Alabama this year. Will have had to go through Alabama to win the national championship. So every other champion.
I'm sorry. In 2013, if Auburn wins that game, then it would be everybody.
That's right. Like every other champion was either Alabama, which they've won a lot. They've won 6,
Right.
or had to beat Alabama on the way there, either in the division, like in Auburn in 2010, LSU in 2019, or beating them in the playoff, like Ohio State in 2014, Clemson a couple times, Georgia obviously last year. So, or it's just been Bama, and those are your champions. So, I think I named all the non-Bama champions, and that was it.
Yeah,
the rest are
that's
Bama.
wild.
So. Again, a weird year when we're not having, when Bama's not a part of the national championship conversation. Daniel, this was fun. Excited to do this every year. Here on the Extra Point, we're not just going to throw stuff on the wall, see what sticks, and then walk away. We're going to have to come up and clean up whatever we threw on the walls. So.
Yeah, at Desmond Howard, who picked a 4.
I got blocked.
And then has now blocked at Jacob Carnes with a K. So phenomenal.
Yeah.
If you could have one person block you on Twitter, I think you'd probably choose him. So
yeah, for what it's worth, you should go check it out on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with the K. I basically quote tweeted a picture. I didn't even tag him in it of Desmond Howard's playoff picks. And I said, because someone had made a joke that like he's only going to get 1 right, the same as all the other people, which now they've all gotten 2 because they all had like Ohio State and Georgia in it. When it was looking like Ohio State wasn't going to get in it. I just put the records of all the teams that they had all chosen and showed that Desmond's was like ridiculously way off, and just said that it's a shame that like he gets to have the pedigree he does when he consistently makes picks like this. Like he gets to be on the flagship. I'm like, man, he just, again, there's no accountability like we're doing right now. That was my frustration, was just like,
right.
Man, he can say whatever he wants and gets to be on College Game Day for the past, decade plus. And I got blocked on Twitter.
Right next to Reese Davis. Just
what a great
no big
seat.
deal. Yeah.
Man, I mean, you got like Ben Watson right there on SEC Network. You could just call over. Marcus Spears you could bring back. Yeah, dude. And you got
They got
Howard.
Lots of good personalities that they could be putting out there.
Bring Maria Taylor back. I mean, I'm sure she can make way better picks than Desmond Howard. So Anyway, so shout out to Desmond Howard for blocking me on Twitter. You can unblock me anytime if you want to hit, hey, if you want to do better in your picks next year, just listen to our podcast. Went 62% against the spread.
All along, man.
Yeah. Be sure to steal some of our picks if you want. But you have to unblock me first.
Maybe in the off season, you can also follow the sport as well.
Yeah, maybe. And, probably not, but, that's, we'll be here. But
certainly would help.
Be sure you can also follow along in the off season while we continue to podcast at the Extra Point Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then be sure to subscribe on the podcast side as well. Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you find your podcasts. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He's Daniel. I am Jacob.